discuss this with Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois. He serves on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thank you for being with us. And we know that your role on that committee prohibits you from discussing the specifics of this case and this investigation. However, were you aware of this outreach to members of the Trump team offering these encryption keys into hacked WikiLeaks documents?
Yeah, all I can tell the American public is there is a pattern here, a flow, a momentum of more Russian actors, more communications, more efforts by the Russians to communicate with Trump associates, and clearly more efforts by Trump associates to go in the reverse, to communicate with Russian actors. It is a pattern that is reacted to by denials, and then there's a disclosure, and then there's an attempt at minimizing what these efforts have meant. So it's part of a larger pattern. Let this investigation continue. Let us follow the facts, and clearly let the Mueller investigation take its course as well.
The outreach from the Russians is, of course, important, particularly from an intelligence perspective and a defense perspective going forward. The receptiveness or alleged receptiveness of the Trump team might be the legal issue here. You say you have seen increasing signs of a receptiveness among the Trump team. What did you mean?
Well, look, several months ago we had told you that the president's son would have said something about receiving dirt on Hillary Clinton. If that's what it is, I love it, but better off in August, talking about timing being more appropriate. Cambridge Analytica attempting to reach out through Mr. Nix to WikiLeaks. I mean, there is a flow. There's an increased number of acknowledged and then first not acknowledged communications by the Russians and by Trump associates back and forth to communicate. And I think there is evidence that they're attempting to coordinate. But again, several months ago, we didn't even have this.
Okay.
Let this investigation take its course. My concern today is, as you might have just heard from Mr. Jordan talking about this, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want nothing to do with this. It is an attempt at every level,
it's more than
an almost desperate level, to distract.
Right. It's more that they don't want to have anything to do with it. They're now aggressively trying to discredit the investigation. And I want to give you a chance to respond to something that Congressman Jordan specifically said. He has a theory, he keeps calling it a theory, that the FISA warrants initially given to the courts to try to get surveillance on people associated with President Trump, I imagine he means Paul Manafort, Carter Page there, were tied to the dossier, the now famous dossier, and that this was somehow some plot by Peter Strzok, the special agent who was moved off the investigation. Do you have any knowledge of that? Have you seen any sign of that? Do you care to respond?
Here's how I'll respond. The dossier has been largely corroborated. The dossier discovered a main point, which it discovered, Mr. Steele discovered, apparently before anybody in our intelligence agencies did, that it was the Russians who attacked the democratic process, and they did it to favor one candidate over another. So that's what's important here. And frankly, what's happening more recently, that the investigation is being stymied by the White House through distraction and, I believe, elements of obstruction. And even in these investigations, my own investigation on the House side, the most common answer to a question by Trump associates in our investigation is, I don't recall. Perhaps worse lately is a refusal to answer because of some sort of alleged privilege, which is not borne out, or just to say, I'm here voluntarily, so I'm not going to answer. Well, this happened with Trump Jr. This happened with Mr. Sessions. This happened with Eric Prince. These are all key questions. If my Republican colleagues don't want to know what happened, at least get out of the way and let us find out so the American public can find out what took place. How was our democratic process challenged?
Do you feel the leadership, the Republican leadership in the committee you sit on, again, House Intelligence, is blocking you from getting the answers you want?
Well, look, I will say this. Mr. Conaway has stepped in when Mr. Nunes recused himself, and I appreciate the role that Mr. Conaway has played. But I believe overall Republican leadership has been weak on their attempts to help us move forward. If people don't answer our questions because they're there voluntarily, they're going to have to come back under subpoena. Unfortunately, being in the minority, we can't compel those subpoenas. It is going to take House leadership, and I mean the Speaker of the House, willingness to accept this fact, push for those subpoenas, get Mr. Sessions back, have Mr. Sessions explain and answer the question, did the President of the United States ask him to do anything to hinder the investigation? With Eric Prince, on my questioning on transcripts that were released, tell us about your previous dealings with the UAE. With Trump Jr., tell us about the conversations with your father. He must answer those questions. What exactly did they talk about in these conversations that they say were privileged about the meeting at Trump Tower with Russians, dealing dirt on Hillary Clinton?
All right, Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois, always great to have you with us.